Welcome to Drinking on the Edge. I'm its host, David Fuhrer, and we have, for your listening pleasure today, representatives from 4 different wineries from the left side of the United States, and 3 from the Northwest, 1 from the Southwest, and none from California. Curious. Our focus is Grüner Veltliner. For those of you who are followers of the show, that a previous episode had us focusing on this expressions of this unique Austrian workhorse grape here on the East Coast with representations from New York, home of where we are, and also Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And Carlo DeVito, who's joining us today from Maryland, co-hosted that episode with me. Hello, Carlo.
Hello.
So let's start out from the far top left of the map. Someone from Washington State.
Oh, I guess that would be me. I'm James Manthel. Got Sincline Winery. This is our 25th anniversary, and I've been making Grüner since 2007.
Let's slip down just south of the Columbia River. Who we got coming in from Oregon?
I guess that would be me. I'm Brad Ford at Illahee Vineyards. We have one of Oregon's biggest Grüner Veltliner plantings. We have 1.5 acres, and we've been growing Grüner since 1988.
And we're going to slide over to the east with the producer of Grüner Veltliner in Idaho, Josh.
So I'm our farm manager here for Houston, and then we have the bulk of the Grüner in the state. Houston has 1 acre here on the estate, and then I farm 3 acres of my own Grüner under our management. We have 4 acres of Grüner, and I believe there's 6 acres in the state.
You are Josh Alger, and you're in the Snake River Valley of Idaho, correct?
We are. A wonderful place to be.
And last but not leastly, we're going to drop way down to the southwest of the United States in New Mexico. Shout us out.
Hey, Chris Padberg. I'm here with my brother Jesse. We're the owners of Vivac Winery in Dixon, New Mexico, and we've been growing Grüner since 2013.
And harkening back to our previous episode, 2013 seems to be a magical year. There seem to be 3 different producers of Grüner out east that planted in 2013.
Out here in the east, certainly, we've had an issue where a lot of the wineries are picking anywhere from 10 to 15 days early. Are any of you picking early? How has the season gone for you with Grüner?
Here in New Mexico, everything's coming in a little bit early. We have not harvested our Grüner, but that'll be the last thing we harvest a week from today, whatever that is, the 21st of September. And we could have harvested starting about now, anytime here in the next week.
Here in the Northwest, it seems, or at least in the Columbia Gorge, seems to be a pretty normal year. 10 days behind last year, but last year was the hottest growing season on record for us.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and we are actually a little earlier than last year, about 5 days early. But last 2 or 3 years, we've had some fairly strange late seasons, a week to 2 weeks late. So I would say this year we're maybe 5 days, 6 days late on average, but still 5 or 6 days earlier than even last year.
How are you all weathering the potential excess sun exposure, especially you up there in New Mexico, you being so far the southern latitudes?
Here in New Mexico, where we're growing is at 6,000 feet, so we're pretty high. But we do end up with a lot of sun exposure, so we run a big canopy, especially on our whites, including the Grüner. But we haven't had very many sunburn issues with the Grüner anyway. It's been pretty good. It grows well here.
Where we've chosen to plant it, we get afternoon shade, so about 5 o'clock, the sun starts dipping below the mountainside. In the peak of the summer, heat's not really that big of a deal. We've switched over from cane pruning to cordons, give a little bit wider fruit zone, also to help little sun exposure, which also seems to help regulate crop quite a bit, shrink the clusters down to about half the size of cane pruning.
In Oregon, we're about 15 days behind right now, so we're even a little bit farther behind than in the gorge, it sounds. And we won't have any problem with sunburn this year. We typically leaf pull, so we try to get some sun exposure if we can. That tends to help us out. We like the skin to be nice and developed because we're going to go ahead and do a cold soak and get some skin contact when we pick it.
How about you, Greg?
I would say things that we deal with some pretty high intense heat. We're, I guess, maybe not unlike the gorge in some of the areas of the gorge, but we had a number of 100+ degree days this year, probably the highest count of 100-degree days that we've experienced, we're managing the canopy pretty heavy and water a little heavier than we'd like to, but we have what we call the western sprawl, pretty high and tight on the east side, and the west side and the cordons are pretty lengthy and heavy and drape over to protect the fruit on these hot days. We haven't noticed a tremendous amount of sunburn. We also keep the canopy fairly heavy with virtually no leaf stripping at all. So we try to manage it with the canopy and with a little water. And just a beautiful grape. We have been very impressed with it and excited about what it has. We were the first ones to plant it in Idaho, and we've had a lot of fun with it.
Speaking of fun, I'm going to kick off the drinking part of this with opening. We got 5 examples of Grüner Veltliner here, and only one of them is sparkling, and that's yours. So I'm going to pull this cork. What was your inspiration for planting this long-winded, unusual, at least for the United States, and relatively unknown grape variety that is, as I mentioned, is the lead grape of Austria?
Here in New Mexico, like my brother was saying, we're at 6,000 feet and it's marginal climate. And we've got a south slope that's up off the valley floor. And it's an optimal place to grow grapes, except for that it's super cold at 6,000 feet. So making it this marginal climate. So we've been scouring the globe looking for potential varietals that will grow at this altitude. And that being an Austrian white like it is, we thought this would be a good place to start. We picked a bunch of different things. And like everything in our lives, it's all a big experimentation. So we didn't know, nobody in our valley had planted Grüner before we did. It's our varietal that grows the best of all that we grow. So I'm very happy with it.
I was in high school when we planted this. And so I have inherited Grüner as a job. He was inspired by a Hungarian fighter pilot who had defected when the Russians invaded Hungary in 1957. He gave up and he emigrated to Austria. So he lived there for a while. Somehow he wound up in Salem, Oregon. And he said, this place reminds me so much of Austria. I think we should be growing Grüner Veltliner here. And my dad and his friend said, oh, great. Where do we get this stuff? So we planted what he had.
James?
So did a wine dinner with David Lake, who was the master of wine, started Columbia Winery in Washington State. After the dinner, we were sitting around drinking some bourbon, talking about some of our favorite wines and talking about Grüner. And he had told me that he had worked with a grower here in the Columbia Gorge to get Grüner Veltliner planted and was all excited about it. And then David ended up getting sick and was going to have to retire. And he called me and told me you should grab those grapes and start making wine from that. And so that was the story how I came into it. That was the first vineyard of Grüner I worked with. And that was a 6-acre planting at Underwood Mountain. And then from there, I worked with Jack Blockson. We spent time in Austria in the war, planted 12 acres in Moxie in Eastern Washington, at which point we planted our own vineyard where we had about 1.5 acres. About 10 years ago.
Greg?
Riesling was one of the first grapes that was planted here in Idaho in the 70s. And we've done a lot with Riesling. It's unique, but we had a particular site that was a little cooler site. And we had tripped onto this grape in the North Sonoma coast and fell in love with it with a producer out of Southern Oregon. We felt like we had a great site location for it, had quite a bit of limestone components that were there and much cooler, and planted it and was just blown away about the wines. And so we planted more.
It's not unheard of to have a sparkling Grüner Veltliner, but it's not common. What went into deciding to make this lovely bubbly from 2022 that I'm having here today?
It was a second leaf, and it just had some components that we were very intrigued by. It was just something we wanted to play with based on what happened in the vineyard.
Chris and I are really wanting to do a sparkling as well with it. As soon as we get a sparkling program up and running, this will be one of our first wines on that very first vintage of sparkling for us too.
All right. Any of the other guys, are you thinking about playing with sparkling or maybe done so before with Grüner?
We sparkled Grüner for about 4 or 5 years from Underwood Mountain Vineyard. It was just always such a cold site. Grüner harvest typically occurred there November 10th, November 15th, often picking it in the snow. And this is typical in the gorge. The picking criteria is we're waiting for acid to go away. And so often it would take that long to get our acids down to 9 grams per liter or 10 grams per liter. We've since moved away from that site to a warmer site, so we're no longer making sparkling out of it.
I'm here with a bottle of the Syncline 2022 Estate Grown
was
Color.
good.
James, talk us through this vintage. How was 2022? How'd that behave for y'all?
22 was a great vintage. Solid, moderate, no extreme heat events, following off of 21, which was our just streaming hot year when we had the big heat dome that hit the Northwest, and we had temperatures of 116 out throughout the Northwest vineyards. So 22 was a nice relief. It was late vintage, cooler, one of the cooler vintages on record. So Grüner harvest late September. And as is like Brad on cool vintages, we tend to do skin contact with a portion of it, leave it destemmed on the skins in the press overnight, 24 hours, no SO2. And then, winemaking's really simple after that. So it's done in concrete eggs and acacia puncheons, all wild ferments.
That's really fascinating.
On warm years, we hold off on skin contact because we don't want to bring pH up. We want to keep down. And
First thing I noticed when I put it to lips is that there's a touch of the glycerol characteristic you don't often find in Grüner Veltliner. I'm sure that has something to do with your treatment of it. And the finish is really long. It's more of a fuller style. Again, the glycerols help to make it that way. What's been your customer response to this?
the consumer is
Yes.
super Grüner. They're really excited about Grüner. From the very first vintage, which was hard to get people in, we were worried about in 2007 producing a wine that was even harder for people to understand or pronounce than Grüner. But since then, it sells out almost immediately. We just make about 1.5 acres, so it's not much. The retail and the restaurant scene embraces it hugely. Grüner just goes exceptionally well with our Northwest food, with all the fresh greens, the seafood. I think it's just a really great wine for the Northwest.
Do you use acacia with a lot, or is it something that you use just with Grüner?
We use it solely with Grüner and only use puncheons because acacia breathes a lot more than oak does. So we've got to be really careful about oxidation. So we use 32 millimeter stave puncheons. And I believe in that vintage, about 50% of them are brand new.
And how long do you leave them in there?
So we typically bottle in June to August of the year following.
Sorry, I can't be tasting this. I'm a big fan of judiciously applied acacia wood aging of especially white varieties. It's a little bit something I really appreciate and something I first discovered in the Istra region of Croatia many years ago.
It really brings out some white flowers, structure without contributing that oak flavor.
Very cool. That's light spice.
Given the limited amount of this you have available and the selling it out, do you have distribution much outside of Washington State on this, James?
So that wine goes to 13 states internationally, to the UK and Japan.
I can imagine this going well with a lot of the lighter Japanese sushi dishes.
Go to Oregon.
Across the river. This is a 2021.
We had pretty much just like James said, we had a little bit warmer year in 21. We do things very similar to James at Syncline, which I'm very proud of because their wines are fantastic. We started using acacia about 12 years ago, and we really like a moderate application. Not too much new is important. So we do maybe 1 out of 5 are new, and then we do a little bit of stainless, put them together, and they only spend 3 months before we bottle it.
And has it been a tough sell, or are your customers all over this?
You guys probably remember in 2008 when Grüner was so popular, people had just completely forgotten about antifreeze in wine. People started drinking it again. There was this Grüner explosion. We sold out in a couple months, but it's moderated quite a bit. People who like Grüner and are fairly nerdy about their wine are excited about it, as well they should be, but it isn't flying off the shelves for us.
To my palate, Brad, I'm finding this to have a more definable Grüner aromatic character. It's got that white pepper. It's got the green pea that you associate with very commonly. As with the Syncline, you got a long finish here, but I'm finding yours is a bit stronger. It's more easily identifiable as Grüner Veltliner, whereas Syncline's was very delicious. It would, in a blind tasting, I'd have a harder time identifying it as such. whereas yours has got that white pepper spice going on here.
We have a little bit of an advantage in the cooler climate, but we don't get that every single time. We have to watch our picking date, and it ripens a lot later than Pinot, so we usually wait until after the Pinot's done, just because of ease of harvest. But we can't wait too long, because that's typically a mistake. We did a little bit of a vertical before we sent them to you. And we cheated. But thank you. There's nice things to say about that.
Let's move over to east to the folks at Houston.
Perfect. You are tasting the sparkling, and as we alluded to earlier, it was our first time ever making that sparkling wine. We did it in the traditional method, and one of the ideas was behind it to make something very light and crisp, and something it's a different style. With Grüners, there were about 3 distinctive styles in Austria. We choose to make all 3 styles, and in one of those is a light effervescent wine, lower alcohol, and it was a fun little project for us. It was on the lees for about 9 months, and we decided to disgorge it and age it with about 6 grams per liter, just to give it some more bubbles in the bottle, a little bit of sweetness, but not
overwhelming.
And it's still in that considered brut category of sweetness. We made about 100 cases of it, and it was all allocated to Wine Club, so it's all sold out now, but we had a few cases here and there that were left over, and that people really seemed to like it.
It worked to my advantage. I thank you for that. It's a really fun, easy to understand, easy to enjoy sparkling wine. Moving on to your still version that you've also graced us with here. This is from the 2023 vintage. Walk me through it.
So the 2023 vintage, and in that style, it's our estate style. So it's picked at a higher brix. It's done in what we call that Smirog style. So it's a little bit heavier, a little bit fatter. So it sees a little bit of neutral oak barrels. So just enough to give it that richness that goes through full ML, as well as some of it, the majority of it being done in stainless steel. And that stainless steel adds that crispness, that lightness, but the oak will add some of that richness and a more medium-bodied mouthfeel, something to make it all blend together.
Neutral, though the oak may be, I'm getting a definite understated sweet aroma to it. Very attractive. It's not necessarily oaky, but it's a light candied aroma. I haven't tasted it yet.
What percentage is what you've put in oak versus stainless steel?
So it sees about 10% oak.
So it's just a nice light touch of oak. It's not
just a little bit to make it round out. And so the oak barrel side of it goes through full ML, and then the stainless stays as white and doesn't go through.
a lot of complexity.
That's some complexity to a beautiful grape.
I'm curious, before we move on to the next one, I'd like to hear from everybody. Putting Grüner through ML is not very typical, at least to my knowledge. What do you all have to add in on that?
We would rather it not go through ML.
We also don't do ML on our Grüner.
We try to avoid it, but I do know that Gobelsberg does some of their wines through full MLF.
Schloss Gobelsberg is nothing to sneeze at. If they're doing some ML, doesn't mean, even though it's unusual, it doesn't mean it's wrong.
No, it's fascinating. Fascinating. It's a concept.
Yeah, I'm finding it a different twist on my palate. It's 2023 and it's rather soft and supple, whereas most Grüners of this age, I would expect it to be a bit more raspy, lasery on my palate.
Usually I'm in studio, so I can take pictures of all the labels when we do our blog posts.
Very cool, man. I'm honored to be on your blog, man. Through making these whites, me and my brother have gone back and forth with Grüner and Riesling. We also grow Riesling. And the years we've tried to, with our vineyard and with the grapes that we're growing, and we get high acidity, we want to let the grape be what it wants to be. So we try to stay out of the way as much as possible. And we've been trying to go a little lighter, absolutely no ML, as I was saying, high acidity. We get a lot of minerality. The Grüner makes a wonderful, clean, crisp white at our location. And so we're trying to just promote that as much as possible and stay out of the way. We do a real cool 20-day fermentation on it. No oak, absolutely no oak. So yeah, that's where we've been headed with our Grüner over the years. And we've been trying to go in that direction more and more as time has gone on.
Well, Carlo, I'm finding this to be a really good expression of a high altitude wine. Again, despite the southern latitude, you have got high altitude here and you got a lightness and a crispness that is a bit more pronounced by comparison, strangely enough. You think farther north it's going to be lighter and crisper. But here again, the altitude's playing a role. It's 6,000 feet. It's a lighter, cleaner style, not as full of, shall we say, dry extract, at least to my palate, than the other wines. It definitely has more of the green pea character coming out, at least to my taste, than the previous wines, and supple and absolutely bone dry, which I think is a hallmark of what you do there at the Padberg's estate.
Yes, indeed. We love dry wines, like keeping them all really dry, especially the whites, of course. But yeah, I appreciate your compliments, David. That's exactly what we're going for. And yeah, staying out of the way as much as possible and letting the varietal character take over a little bit and making sure that it's a true Grüner. And also appreciating the lighter style in Austria, not trying to make this anything heavy at all. That's where we've been going. We like it better that way. So we've been making it that way. And we don't have very much planted. We've only got 1,000 vines in the ground. We'll probably plant more because it does so well and we like it so much, but we only have enough to do one lot and we want to do it the way we like it the most, and that's that lighter style. So,
and in terms of maintaining volume, keeping your costs at a reasonable level, we were informed by your East Coast counterparts a couple of weeks back that Grüner is reliable in getting good yields. Is that the case out west?
With us, it's actually the one that produces the most for us. A lot of our other vines are still too young to tell to see what's going to happen, but compared to the Petit Verdot, for example, or the Riesling that we have, it's the biggest producer of anything that we grow. That being said, that 1,000 vines on the biggest year we ever had would be like 3 ton. None of them produce that much. We get a few grapes, and the grapes we get are really nice.
It's a big cluster. We grow Pinot, which is a little tiny clustered grape, and Grüner is huge, and it's heavy. Yeah,
gives you good volume. Gives you good volume as well as quality there, eh?
I can imagine some Germanic love of that for some reason. You get a lot of grapes out of a plant.
We like to crop ours at around 4 tons an acre for that estate style that you tried, the Smaragd. And then our sparkling, we grow at a little bit heavier, about 5.5 tons an acre is where we like it at, just to preserve those acids. Because with sparkling, you're picking for acids more so than bricks. We crop our estate Grüner at a little bit lower just to develop those bricks and to let the fruit come to us than us trying to look for a specific brick or TA threshold that we're trying to pick at. And so that's what our 2 style choices are. And luckily we have a few acres that we can maneuver that crop load around a little bit. But it does like to grow heavy if it can.
For us, it's a moderate cropper. Our region is notorious for wind.
Yes, it most certainly is.
An average day in June, July, August is 20 knots. Knot days are not unheard of. So we tend to see very small clusters. Since we went to cordon, our cluster size is almost half of what it was before. And for us, that's really helps keep the grapes spread out better, avoids the stacking. And so it brings about 3 tons an acre.
Carlo, you're asking about disease there, eh?
Well, yeah, because of the heavy skin, do you experience much disease pressure, or do you experience much animal pressure?
No disease pressure.
No, nothing really.
With like wasps or bees or something, go in and start desiccating whole sections of the vineyard, which has not been fun for us. And it sucks for oxidative qualities in the wine as well. And so we have to watch out for that quite a bit. But other than that, no disease, no powdery, nothing like that.
At least you're dry that high up. You're not going to have issues of coming in with those wasps and bees pricking the grapes. Right. Yeah. How about there in Idaho?
Yeah, we don't have a ton of disease on them. It's very much noticeable, I'll tell you, with a powdery mildew. As someone alluded to before, the clusters are, at least in our region, are monstrous, especially if you can, it's just a monstrous cluster. I think this year on the one block that we picked, they were over 0.5 pound a cluster, average cluster weight. So they were monstrous. And that was a sparkling block, right? When we're growing in that 5.5 tons to the acre, that's when you have more of that stacking and you're more prone to those powdery mildew issues. But I would say as a whole, man, it really is, it's pretty resilient comparative to other varieties that we grow. If you were to grow them at 5.5 tons, you'd have to stay on top of it every week with a spray program. as opposed to Grüner is pretty resilient, at least our area. And the value of that is we're really a dry climate. We get no more on a strange year than 10 inches of water, of rainwater. So we don't have a lot of pressure from that side of things, but a little bit to allude to that. Yeah, it's really, especially on the 4 ton an acre, when we grow up more towards the estate, it really does well with resisting all different types of disease.
Fascinated by Chris and Jesse's growing region, the whole 6,000 foot elevation kind of a conversation. Is that possible?
I don't mind at all. Padberg boys, happy to hear you weigh in on the uniqueness of what Vivox got up there in northern New Mexico.
We're located between Taos and Santa Fe, which are both at 7,000 feet, and there's not a chance in hell you're going to grow a vine in either of those spots. But we're in this kind of nestled little valley that's, as long as you're off the valley floor, we've got warm little climate. Every summer, usually we'll see 1 or 5 days of 100+ degree highs or whatever. But it's for the last 2 years, we haven't seen 100 degrees. But I don't know. It's really dry. We're about 8 or 10 inches of rainfall a year, or precipitation total. Some of that comes as snow. Like we'll get a foot of snow sometimes in the winter, but mostly 3 or 4 inches. What we really have to worry about is our cold temperatures. Are as long as it stays above 0, we're okay. But sometimes you'll see -10 or something like that. And it's rare, but it can happen because we're in the mountains. I don't know. We're right at the southern tip of the Rockies. So you can picture Colorado in some ways. It's warm in the summer. But we have a really good diurnal shift. So even if it's 95 during the day, it's going to be like 55 at night, or maybe 60. So every night it cools off really well. We just planted Zweigelt a couple years ago and harvested our first little harvest this year. But even that's too cold. Even it's too cold for that. So we're getting crown gall, and so we're going to have to pull that. And Pinot Meunier has been doing really well for us as well.
I think we're a ways away from doing a Zweigelt episode, drinking on the edge. Even for Austria, even though they've made some great strides with that very lighter red grape. Anyways, giving a wrap up to this, I'm curious as to where you all see the future of Grüner Veltliner, both for you individually and collectively as a grape variety here in the western parts of the United States.
Is anybody planting more, Grüner?
There you go. It's a more specific question.
We've only been in the ground since 7. First ones to plant it in Idaho. We have a region that is just beginning.
Yep.
We have a lot of connections to Eastern Washington, a lot of similarities. And James, a lot of connections to the Gorge. I think you guys make some great wines. There is some tremendous momentum with chefs right now about Grüner. And that's probably the thing that I'm most interested in. We still have a huge learning curve with our customer base. They seem receptive. I'm excited about the fact of what chefs are saying. I'm excited about what our customers are saying.
I think, as we were saying before, we only make the one style, the one still wine, and we're in the process of acquiring some more land right now. I don't see why we wouldn't plant on some of that land as well in our expansion and have a sparkling. As Jesse was saying, my brother talked about, we're excited about starting a sparkling program. Another thing to remember is we're a small winery. We make 5,000 cases a year. So if we make whatever we make, we sell it. It's not a problem. So expanding and having another style of Grüner on the list would be absolutely no problem. Everybody loves it. It's very popular in our winery and it sells out every year. Also, we would have enough, if we planted some more, we'd have enough to start distributing it. As far as the restaurants are concerned, a lot of people want it and we don't really have enough to give out to other than our tasting room and our wine clubs. I think the buzz in the restaurants, as well as us being able to plant more and get our volume up, I don't see a problem continuing, even though it's Grüner, it's something out of the ordinary. I don't think we'll see a problem with selling it all very easily.
And running the risk of ghettoizing y'all there being in New Mexico, I've found Grüner Veltliner in general, because of its structure, lends itself well to a great many richly flavored capsicum chili infused dishes, things like scallops with Thai chilies, the high acidity relative to everything else, and the not so fleshed out flavor profiles lends itself really well to that.
Some of you have been growing Grüner for a while, making Grüner for a while. How do you find that it lasts in the cellar?
I pulled out, blind tasted a group of people on 20 Grüner at a dinner party with some wine professionals, and it shocked people how youthful and vibrant it was.
Right.
I think they aged spectacularly. So I'm curious how yours are doing, Brad.
Grüner ages well. It's similar to Riesling, I think. I don't think anybody would say you can't age Riesling. I don't think anybody would say you can't age Grüner. It does well in the long term.
Certainly, that's been borne out by the Austrians. Many years ago, had conducted a tasting in London with some MWs, and that kind of turned people's heads a long time back about the age-worthiness of great Austrian Grüner Veltliner. No reason why comparable things couldn't occur here in the U.S.
I just need to pack it with acid.
Carlo, any last comments?
No, I'm just damn jealous I wasn't in the studio to taste along with you. These wines really sound fascinating, and it's killing me that I'm not there.
Structurally, these wines are built to last, and I'm looking forward to not having to rush them through the weekend. I enjoy these through next week as well in my refrigerator.
I may have to invite myself over for dinner someday.
You are most welcome. Look, and also most welcome are our guests here today. I want to thank you, everybody, for helping to create this great, looking at the left side of the U.S., what's happening with Grüner Veltliner. I wish you all continued success. I wish you all a great 2024 harvest already underway. And thank you for joining us on Drinking on the Edge. It was a great time, a great learning experience.
Great job, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Carlo. Thank you, David. It was great to hear from all you guys. This is awesome.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Carlo.